Right. Okay, let me introduce everybody. Amadine, how do I say? Le
Pape.
As it's said, from Matrix. Ryan, John King from Foam, and Julian from Flyingcarpet. Now, well, first of all, does anyone have any sort of reaction to Owen's points there?
Completely agreed in terms of shaping the word and taking new angles on things and having to imagine the future. And the reputation side of things is also something that we're very aware of. And I'm very glad to hear other people going into that direction.
Anyone else?
Yeah, Owen, great. You're a great speaker, so thank you. I think really important to draw attention to, tokenization for these other aspects of our society, like reputation and how that may work, and really looking past just tokens as a funding mechanism and really seeing how, tokenizing everything will really affect the sharing economy and beyond that, just our economy.
Well, let's get into this subject then. So, I mean, this panel's about the decentralized internet, and actually there's very interesting at this point, isn't it? Because what's happened in the last couple of weeks is, everyone in the internet industry knew about decentralization. I mean, the joke amongst the journalists is talking about GAFTA all the time: Google, Apple, Facebook, Twitter, Amazon. Well, Twitter to a lesser extent, I suppose, these days. But so the huge centralization of these massive platforms, everyone's aware of that in the technology industry. But it's quite clearly it's entering gradually, finally, I suppose, entering the mainstream debate. But what does it actually mean to have a decentralized internet? What is it? What is it going to be like? Give us a preview. Anyone?
You can start. Yeah.
So the idea of so first, I think it's interesting to note that the internet has always been decentralized, and it just got lost with these tech giants. But we're eventually taking it back to its roots, and having an internet which is decentralized means that we're eventually removing this idea that there are big authorities making decisions on our data or our conversations. It's going to provide data ownership, and it's really the idea that this will have to manage this reputation system so that people can be exposed to the data they want to be exposed to.
So at Foam, we're primarily working on spatial protocols and location standards. Kind of the flagship project is something called proof of location, but we're designing an alternative to GPS that would be more privacy preserving and allow location authentication. So I'm just sure everyone here is familiar with the process of downloading a new application and clicking, yes, I agree to share my location when the app is on, or maybe you accidentally click, I agree to share my location all the time, or we may have learned some applications like Uber don't even prompt you with this option, and they have been following you all this time. So I think that these recent revelations with Facebook or Uber is really coming to the public consciousness. And really, from Foam's point of view, taking back control is really about self-sovereign identity, about location and where have you been, and that we want the users to be able to control these attestations and have a privacy-preserving log of, their locations.
But I mean, I'm a journalist, so I get to ask lots of stupid questions. Thank God. What do people care? I mean, one of the problems certainly in the consumer internet is that people just don't care, and they're given all of these options, and in the end they go, well, whatever. I don't care if Google knows where I am.
I think as soon as you talk about money, then people start taking care.
So incentivizing.
Yeah, incentivization is a big part. I think you mentioned that the internet always been decentralized. I cannot agree with that. The intention was from Team, the peer-to-peer protocol on the internet, was to build a system that people could send information between each other. But then you mentioned the giants, like Google, Amazon, they took over the internet by building some tool that we call a bridge. So Chrome, Safari, the only way to access the internet is to provide this kind of, people can only access the internet using Chrome, for example. I think as soon as you give incentivization to people and tell them, okay, if you use a different tool, you'll be making money. And instead of Google tracking you and selling information to third-party services, you tell them, okay, if you use this other application, then you'll be making a lot of money. I think they'll be incentivized to do it. and it will change. It doesn't. You don't actually try to change people's behavior by saying, okay, if you don't, please don't use Facebook because Facebook is stealing your data. People will be like, yeah, I mean, I'm fine with that.
That's generally what seems to be the case.
Yeah.
Anyone, any other thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's. I agree on the incentivization, and if one thing, if decentralized projects are going to be successful, is that they will have to need a more unique selling point, which is superior to equivalent centralized services. But when you see cases like the Facebook one, where you have everyone's data into one place and they do control what is good and what is bad and what you have to see in the morning or what you don't have to see in the morning, well, somebody's freedom fighter is another people's terrorist. So ideally, we should have morally relative visibility on the world. I want to see something, the people I do agree with, the taste I share with them, so I want to see their content. I don't necessarily want to see the content from other people I'm not aligned with. And more interestingly, if we can get to a point where we also know where we stand in the world and we say, okay, that's what I like, that's what I see, but like 99% of the planet do not agree with this. And if I go and step on that side, oh, what do I see? It might be also helpful. Yeah. It's hard to do.
I think there are two big problems with what we're trying to build. One is called governance, as you're trying to mention. So how we can build it in a decentralized world, how we can build a system that everyone agree with, something that we're trying to build. And also the second one is reputation, because myself, I don't want to live in like what China is trying to build, a reputational state, because humans make mistakes, and a reputational where you actually track everyone, and then they cannot take the train because they're reputational of their rate.
That's actually starting to happen now, because China has built this social monitoring system where people are effectively given a social score. And there are actually starting to be incidences and examples of it, probably not released in their press, but certainly leaking out to the Western press, of people being refused jobs, or not being able to become a taxi driver or whatever because they don't have a high enough rating. What are the opportunities for state control in the decentralized world?
Go ahead.
Please.
So my previous project was building a self-sovereignty identity for developing country and emerging market. And we quickly realized that if you build a unique identification system, like maybe Uport is trying to do, it's good and it's got a need for that. But I do think
Uport is working on this.
Is working on an identity system.
Yeah.
It's an application that track you, give you like kind of ratings, and then you can open a bank account or you can do this kind of stuff, which is pretty good. But I do think in the identification system, in a decentralized world, we will need something which is called a multimodal identification system. So you can choose to have different identities. So it's the same like you have the identity with your family and you behave completely different with your family, and you have an identity with the friends, and you have an identity with the job, you have an identity with the social channels. And I believe in that. I don't think that if we build a unique identification system, except if it's completely anonymous, that we can solve the problem, because then you can track people and then it becomes like kind of a Skynet system.
Just want to say to your question about what are the kind of opportunities for centralized control in these systems. Foam is a great supporter of Uport, and we've integrated with them for self-sovereign identity, but that wouldn't stop a state from saying, okay, well now we require your Uport credentials for you to do anything in this state.
Yeah.
So,
that's worth remembering.
Yeah, that just is worth remembering. So, client-side verification or, application restrictions. So maybe we have this decentralized way to build a reputation or, verify yourself. But when you actually come to the application, if that application is run by the state, they're still going to say, we require X, Y, and Z.
Right. Oh, we require a key or whatever it is. In fact, there's a breaking news item today on BBC saying that 26 police forces in the UK are now asking to download the entire contents of people's mobile phones, which has just came out this morning, rather interestingly. Let's just move along. I'd like to sort of talk a little bit more about your projects particularly. Can I ask you a question, Amandine? The Matrix isn't on a blockchain right now, but it is a decentralized platform. Could you expand a bit more on that, and also explain to us why you've chosen not to do blockchain?
So yeah, Matrix is an open network for communication, and typically use cases would be interoperable chat or voice over IP, or like a communication layer for VR and AR and even IoT. So it's any real-time communication, completely decentralized and secure. We're not a blockchain because we don't use proof of consensus, and we're really optimizing for the low latency communication use cases. And that's really the main thing.
So it would be great in emerging markets, for instance.
Sorry?
Low latency. Oh, sorry,
in
for
terms
speed,
of real time, yeah, speed.
Speed.
In terms
Apologise
of
for speed, of course.
because when you chat, you don't want to wait 5 minutes for your message to come across, and the data is not as critical. If a message is displayed a bit earlier than another one, it's not as critical as a financial transaction.
Unlike Slack, which takes about half an hour to send a message, it might have been.
Which is not,
anyone else
a
hate
blockchain
Slack?
anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, it is ridiculous. It won't work over 3G or whatever. And then carry on.
So yeah, that's the main reason: the low latency and less criticality than financial transactions, especially. Right. And we're not peer-to-peer neither, although we are evolving into that direction. But we do use most of the same technology as blockchain because we do have some, and in the end the network is just a huge database and everything is replicated on every server. Every conversation is on, the conversations is owned by everyone participating in it and is replicated everywhere with some proof of how the messages do follow one another.
Do you see a time in the future where you might move to a DLT or something like that?
What we might do is use tokens for potentially use cases to solve like anti-spam and reputation problems in a conversation context. Makes lots of sense. But otherwise, in terms of the technology itself, probably not.
Okay. What about your other the other projects with Flyingcarpet, for instance? I mean, I'd also like to hear what you guys think about some of the emerging new sort of trends in things like sort of hash graph, for instance. Is it of interest to you guys?
Yeah, it is. At the moment, we more focused on developing use cases in developing country and emerging markets. So that's not what we're looking at. But so Flyingcarpet is a decentralized autonomous transportation system. And it's a decentralized transportation system that incentivized everyone to be part of. Like, if you have a drone, you can rent it out, your drone, and your drone will be used for doing any task. And the Flyingcarpet is a decentralized autonomous docking charging station that you can place on your rooftop, on your car, on the garden, and then you'll be charging any autonomous vehicle worldwide at any point of time, and you'll be making money. And it's unstoppable. So it's a decentralized autonomous transportation system that cannot be controlled and cannot be shut down and cannot be modified. And then you've got different kind of third-party services that can plug in and have access to. Hashgraph is a fantastic kind of research, and I've been studying a lot and building stuff with Ethereum Foundation. We've been looking at it as well with Swarm. One of the advisors of Flyingcarpet is Victor Tron, which is the main developer behind Ethereum protocol with Swarm protocol. So we've been looking at it as well. And Swarm is a perfect fit because you can do a swarm of decentralized autonomous IoT devices. So it's pretty cool.
So, but it sounds extremely futuristic. I mean, what sort of timeline are you working on?
Well, it's not futuristic. We've been running like 2 proof of concept. One in Papua New Guinea for analysis. I'm going to do the presentation, but basically to do a coconut plantation analysis, so you can predict the amount of coconuts in the plantation. One of the proof of concept is for farming, so you can do a biomass analysis, so the drone can fly over the land and then provide secure and very accurate data about the land, and then send it to the truck of the farmer, and then the farmer can just expand. Also working on a new kind of like new proof of concept where you can do you have the drone that can carry about 80 kilograms of chemicals, and then you can go over the land and automatically expand on the specific area of the land. That's what we're really interested in looking with foam, because for us is if you have like an accurate GPS location and you know exactly where there are the vehicles flying around, you can also stop them, or you can modify the journey, because maybe you don't want to fly over a nuclear plantation and all this stuff.
Yes, flying over nuclear plantation is different. What about
Nuclear plant? Yeah.
Oh,
sorry.
what's a nuclear plant? Sorry. What's the sort of timeline is Foam working on for its project?
I guess short term and long term. We have kind of multiple timelines. I guess for nobody who knows what foam is, we're building spatial protocols and location standards. And there's kind of three main elements to foam. The first is solving location encoding for smart contracts. So there's currently no standardized way to speak about location within a smart contract. So we have a proposal called a cryptospatial coordinate, which is a way for a smart contract to make an immutable claim to a location and get a unique identifier. The other element is the spatial index, which is a full stack web app, which is a visual blockchain explorer. We think of it as a cross between a Bloomberg terminal and a Google Maps. So essentially, if you use this coordinate standard, you can then index these contracts and visualize them. To your question about developing world or et cetera, everyone kind of thinks location is a solved problem, but there are billions of people without a postal address in developing countries, and there's billion more square meters of land that don't have any address either. So these places need an address, and there are proprietary companies trying to solve this, such as What 3 Words. But if they're
What 3 Words is a proprietary solution.
yeah,
isn't
so
it?
they're licensing this to Mercedes or train companies, but they want to be this global standard for location for any square meter. But that's not really going to work out if you have to keep paying some sort of centralized entity. And the reason these open source ones haven't taken off is because there's no monetization strategy. So we're proposing that as a location solution for smart contracts. And we have this visualizer, this spatial index, which is general purpose. So you can skin it for any application. That's currently running on the testnet. I'll demo it later. Both of those are kind of working. The main pillar of foam, though, is proof of location. So a privacy-preserving alternative to GPS and a way to generate location authentication. And we're doing that by incentivizing kind of zones of local coverage through time synchronization protocol. So the first two elements are kind of ready.
Fantastic.
We're doing a token sale in the next potentially 6 weeks or so. So element 1 and 2 will be on mainnet then, cool. And then element 3 is a long road ahead.
Great, thanks. Well, I think we're going to hear some more detail from you guys later, some of you guys later on, in some more deeper presentations. But for now, I just want to, everyone, if you could say thank you to our panel. Thank you very much.
Thanks.